With the arrival of Spanish colonizers in the Philippines in 1521, the social, political, and racial landscape of the archipelago underwent a profound transformation. The introduction of Catholicism, Western education, and a rigid social hierarchy fundamentally altered the way Filipino society was organized, particularly in terms of race and ethnicity. Black Filipinos, particularly the Negrito populations, found themselves increasingly marginalized in a society that placed a premium on lighter skin and European features. The Spanish colonial government implemented a system of encomiendas, large land grants given to Spanish settlers, which further displaced indigenous populations, including Black Filipinos. The encomenderos, or landowners, were tasked with converting the local population to Christianity and extracting labor and tribute. While many lowland Filipinos, particularly the Tagalogs, Visayans, and Ilocanos, were incorporated into this system, Black Filipino communities, living in more remote regions, were largely left out of the colonial economy. However, this exclusion did not protect them from exploitation or discrimination. Instead, they were cast as wild and uncivilized, a characterization that justified their exclusion from the benefits of colonial rule, such as education and economic opportunities. The marginalization of Black Filipinos during the Spanish colonial period was not merely an economic or political phenomenon, but also a deeply cultural one. Spanish colonizers brought with them a racialized worldview that placed darker-skinned peoples at the bottom of the social hierarchy. This was reinforced by the Catholic Church, which depicted Black Filipinos and other indigenous groups as pagans in need of salvation. These racial and religious ideologies worked hand in hand to justify the subjugation and marginalization of Black Filipinos, who were often portrayed as primitive and backward compared to the more civilized, Christianized lowland Filipinos. In addition to the systemic marginalization by Spanish authorities, Black Filipinos also faced discrimination from other Filipinos, particularly those from lowland, Christianized communities. As the colonial economy developed, with Manila emerging as a key trading hub in the global Spanish Empire, lowland Filipinos who had converted to Christianity and adopted Spanish customs began to see themselves as superior to those who had not. This created a racial and cultural divide between the lowland Filipinos and the upland Negrito populations, who were increasingly pushed to the fringes of society. Despite these challenges, Black Filipino communities maintained their distinct cultural identities and resisted efforts at assimilation. In many ways, their isolation from the colonial economy allowed them to preserve their traditional ways of life, including their languages, belief systems, and social structures. However, this isolation also came at a cost, as they were increasingly left out of the economic and political developments taking place in the lowlands. The marginalization of Black Filipinos continued into the American colonial period, which began in 1898 following the Spanish-American War. The United States, which had recently acquired the Philippines as a colony, implemented a new system of governance that aimed to civilize the Filipino population and prepare them for eventual self-rule. This system included the introduction of public education, infrastructure development, and a centralized government. However, much like the Spanish before them, the Americans prioritized the Christianized lowland Filipinos, particularly the Tagalogs and Visayans, while largely ignoring the needs of Black Filipino communities. American racial ideologies also played a significant role in shaping the way Black Filipinos were perceived during this period. The United States, a nation deeply rooted in the legacy of slavery and racial segregation, brought its own racial hierarchies to the Philippines. These hierarchies were reinforced through the American education system, which taught Filipino students that lighter skin and European features were superior to darker skin and indigenous features. As a result, Black Filipinos, particularly the Ida and Adi, continued to be marginalized and excluded from the benefits of colonial rule. The American period also saw the rise of anthropological studies that sought to classify and categorize the various ethnic groups in the Philippines. These studies, often conducted by American scholars, reinforced the notion that Black Filipinos were primitive and backward, a characterization that would persist well into the 20th century. This scientific racism further justified the exclusion of Black Filipinos from the mainstream political and economic developments taking place in the Philippines during the American colonial period.